There are nights in WWE history that every fan remembers. Think of Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant, Stone Cold Steve Austin's first beer bash, or Cody Rhodes finally finishing his story. These are the moments WWE celebrates, the ones etched into history forever. But what about the other nights? The darker nights? The moments so controversial or tragic that WWE has tried to wipe them from the record completely? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the stories they never wanted you to see again. World Wrestling Entertainment is a master of storytelling. It's a universe they've built from the ground up, a world of heroes and villains, triumph and tragedy, all carefully managed for a global audience. They own their history, polishing it for documentaries, Hall of Fame speeches, and their own streaming service. But what happens when history doesn't fit the brand? What about the moments that are too tasteless, too uncomfortable, or too heartbreaking to be neatly packaged? Those are the chapters WWE has tried to rip from its own storybooks. These aren't just moments that have been forgotten. They're moments the company has actively tried to make you forget. They reveal a side of the sports entertainment machine that isn't so polished, a side of bad ideas, real-life pain, and the pressure on performers to do the unthinkable for a storyline. To get why some of WWE's worst nights happened, you have to go back to the ruthless aggression era in the early 2000s. After winning the war against WCW, WWE was in a race with itself, desperate to be as edgy as it was in the Attitude Era. That desperation led to some truly terrible decisions, and no storyline shows this better than the saga of Katie Vick. In late 2002, Triple H started a feud with Kane, but instead of keeping it in the ring, the story went somewhere dark and deeply personal. Triple H accused Kane of killing his high school girlfriend, Katie Vick, in a car crash years earlier. Kane, showing a rare side of himself, told the audience about the horrible accident, talking about the guilt he'd carried for a decade. But Triple H wasn't finished. He claimed something much, much worse happened. To prove it, WWE aired one of the most disgusting and hated segments in its history. The video showed Triple H, dressed as Kane, in a funeral home, caressing a mannequin in a casket. The segment ended by simulating an act of necrophilia, a moment so shocking it was condemned by everyone, everywhere, almost immediately. The backlash was huge. Rumors have circulated for years that some crew members quit on the spot, and that the segment was filmed in a real funeral home just a thin wall away from an actual wake. Both Triple H and producer Bruce Pritchard reportedly begged Vince McMahon not to air it, but he wouldn't listen. Since that night, WWE has pretended the segment never existed. It's never mentioned, never shown in video packages, and is completely erased from their official history. A monument to a time when trying to be edgy went way too far. This wasn't a one-time thing. A few years later, in 2006, the wrestling world was still mourning the tragic death of the legendary Eddie Guerrero. During a feud with Eddie's best friend, Rey Mysterio, a young Randy Orton was told to say one of the cruelest lines ever heard in a WWE ring. While Rey was dedicating his road to WrestleMania to his friend, Orton stared him down and said, "Eddie ain't in heaven. Eddie's down there's in hell." The crowd went from roaring to dead silent. Using a real-life death for cheap heat felt like a new low, even for a bad guy. Years later, Randy Orton admitted how much he hated saying that line, calling it the biggest regret of his career. He said he only did it after getting the blessing from both Rey Mysterio and Eddie's widow, Vickie Guerrero, who believed Eddie would have wanted it to help the business. Despite their approval, the moment left a scar. Like Katie Vick, WWE doesn't like to bring this promo up. It's another night they'd rather you just forget. A night when real grief was used as a weapon. Sometimes the nights WWE wants to hide aren't about bad writing, but about the real harm done to the performers. In wrestling, the pressure to be a team player is enormous, and it's pushed people into situations that have followed them for their entire careers. Take January 2006. Edge had just won his first WWE championship, and to establish his new rated R superstar character, WWE booked a live sex celebration. A bed was set up in the ring, and Edge and his partner, Lita, were told to have a celebration that would push TV limits. It got huge ratings, but it came at a high price. Both Edge and Lita have since said they hated doing it. Lita especially has been clear that she was completely against it. She revealed that she felt she had no choice and was threatened with being fired if she refused. According to Lita, people like Edge and John Cena even tried to convince management to kill the idea, but the decision was final. The segment and the ugly fan reaction aimed at her that followed was a big reason she left WWE later that year. For WWE, it was a ratings hit. For the performers, it was a night of humiliation they were forced into, a moment that is now conveniently missing from WWE's official history of that era. These kinds of incidents are often part of a bigger picture. Real backstage fights are kept quiet to protect the on-screen show. Storylines that fail are just dropped without another word. But there is one night, one event, that stands above all others in its tragedy and the controversy that followed. It's the ultimate hidden story of the industry. On May 23, 1999, at the Over the Edge pay-per-view in Kansas City, Missouri, Owen Hart was supposed to make a grand entrance from the rafters of the arena. Dressed as his goofy superhero character, the Blue Blazer, he was going to be lowered into the ring. It was just a stunt. But something went horribly wrong. The quick-release latch on his harness opened too early, and Owen Hart fell 78 feet into the ring. The TV broadcast immediately cut away, as announcer Jim Ross told viewers at home that what they were seeing was not part of the show. Owen was rushed to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe. Backstage, wrestlers and crew were in shock. And yet, Vince McMahon made the call to continue the show. The audience in the arena was never officially told what happened. In a moment that is still chilling to watch, Jim Ross had to announce to the pay-per-view audience, live on air, that Owen Hart had died. The decision to keep the show going is still one of the most controversial moments in wrestling history. Critics, including Owen's brother Bret Hart, have blasted the choice, saying it put business ahead of human life and forced a grieving roster to perform in the very ring where their friend had just died. Vince McMahon has defended his choice, arguing that the show had to go on, but for many, that excuse doesn't cut it. The Over the Edge 1999 pay-per-view was never released on VHS or DVD. Today, it is not available to stream in its full original form on Peacock or the WWE Network. Only heavily edited versions without any mention of Owen's death during the broadcast have ever been made available. A clear sign of a night so dark, WWE is still trying to hide it. These stories are more than just wrestling trivia. They're reminders of the real world and the real consequences that exist behind the curtain. If you want to hear more stories that the wrestling world tried to forget, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. WWE is a master of illusion. They can edit history, create legends, and build a billion-dollar empire on incredible stories. But they can't erase everything. The memories of these nights live on, not just for the fans who saw them, but for the people whose lives were changed forever. The humiliation Lita felt, the regret Randy Orton still carries, and the heartbreaking loss of Owen Hart are scars that can't be edited out. They are the truth behind the fiction and the reality behind the spectacle. These are the nights WWE tried to hide, but they are the nights we must remember, because they tell the whole, uncensored story of professional wrestling.